All right, how is it going? Oh no. Well, that's because you got hit in the face. I'm sorry. All right. Hey, everyone, can we give a huge hand to Evelyn tonight for leading worship? That was awesome. She did an incredible job, and I am very, very blessed that she is going to help us lead from now on. Okay, a couple of housekeeping things that we need to go over. First of all, make sure, if you don't remember, not to leave the room while I'm talking and while we're playing music. That is a huge distraction. If you didn't go to the bathroom before service, wait until after service, okay? Because that's just a big distraction when you're walking back and forth, in and out. People can't really focus on what's going on in here, and that is the most important part. I promise your little bladder can hold it until service is over. So make sure that you don't do that. Also, make sure no PDA, okay? Don't touch each other. You don't have to touch each other. Leave room for Jesus and the Holy Spirit and the Father. That's a lot of room, okay? They're big. God is a big God. You need to leave a lot of space. So make sure that you leave room for Jesus while we're talking about Jesus, okay? I would really appreciate it if you did that. And also, after this, we have small groups, okay? After this, we have small groups. Make sure that you go to a small group. If you're new here and you don't know where to go, come find me. I will hook you up with a small group so that you can get involved in one of our small group communities here, okay? But you cannot go outside of the building and just hang around and all that kind of stuff, okay? We have to know where you are. That's for your safety and ours. So make sure that you remember all of those things and don't break any of them. Otherwise, I'm just going to have to call your parents. I don't want to do that, okay? I deal with students for a reason. All right. If you got a Bible, go ahead and grab it. Open to John. John chapter 14 is where we're going to be. If you don't know where that is in your Bible, if you go about 2/3 of the way back, so grab like a good chunk and then flip it this way, you should be close to the New Testament. It's Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. We're going to be in John chapter 14 tonight. If you're here and you don't have a Bible that you can call your own, if you don't have a Bible that you own, please tell me. I would love to get you one if you want one. I'll pay for it. I'll buy it. It'll be free to you. Don't worry about that. Just let me know. Say, hey, Aaron, I want a Bible, and I will get you one. But we're going to be in John chapter 14 tonight. Now, this past weekend, went on a fishing trip to Oklahoma with some friends that I have made on the internet. For most of you that don't know, I really like to kayak fish. I do it quite a lot. I have an Instagram page dedicated to kayak fishing. If you go there, you're going to see several things. One is pictures of my boat. 2 is pictures of me with the fish that I catch in the boat. 3 is me doing dumb things while I'm fishing. For instance, the video I posted yesterday is I'm fly fishing. I've never fly fished before. I'm standing on a rock, and then all of a sudden I am not standing on a rock, okay? Because rocks are slippery, right? So that's what you'll see if you go there. If you're just like, oh, I wonder what that's like, that's all you're going to find. So if you're not interested in fishing stuff, that's all you're going to find over there. But through doing that, I have made some content creator friends, and they invited me to go with them on this trip to Broken Bow, Oklahoma last weekend just to fish. And I was super stoked about it, right? So we were going to Broken Bow, and none of us have ever been there. They're all in Texas. Obviously, I am here in Arkansas. None of us have ever been there. But there were 2 guys, Brandon and Charlie, that planned this trip for all of us, right? And so we're in this big group message or whatever. We're talking about what the trip's going to be like. We're all getting jacked up about it. And then as time gets closer to us going, we're wanting information, right? Because we have to haul a lot of stuff with us. Like we all use multiple rods to fish. It's not like we go out there with a worm and a bobber and one rod. Like we use a lot of rods, use a lot of different techniques. And so we're wanting to know exactly what we're going to be doing so that we can be prepared, we can be ready for what we might need. We're also like, what is the weather going to be like? You know, have you checked the weather reports? What do we need to pack? Is it going to be cold? Is it going to be cold and then warm up? Like, is it going to rain? Because that all determines what we bring or whatever. And so we're asking all of these questions, and they were just like so overwhelmed. Brandon and Charlie were finally like, look, we'll just do a Zoom call. You can ask all of the questions that you want to ask, and we'll answer them. So it's 2 nights before we leave for this trip. We're all on this Zoom call together. There's 8 of us, right? And we're asking Brandon and Charlie, the guys that planned this, the ones who are in charge, because they planned it. By the way, if you plan an event, you are in charge of the event. You are in charge of knowing all of the information for that event. Like when I plan Epic Weekend, no one texts a volunteer and goes, hey, what's happening on that weekend? They all text me because I planned it, right? Brandon and Charlie apparently did not know that because they did not know anything. Like 0 things did they know. It was like, hey, so like, what are we going to do while we're there? Like, we're looking for like a daily schedule. Like when I send you guys a schedule for every weekend, you know exactly what we're going to do nearly every minute of the day. Okay, right? So we're like, what are we going to do? And they're like, we're going to fish. Duh. That's the whole reason that we are going. Okay, we know that we're going to fish, but like, what are we going to do? Like, are we going to be on the water for like how long? And they were like, we're going to be in the water all day. Okay. What is the weather like? I don't know. You got apps on your phone, man. I guess they just expected us to do that. But again, when you plan a trip, you should know all the things. They did not know that. I don't know. I don't know what the weather's going to be like. Do we need to bring our own food? I don't know. It's like that sound on TikTok. I don't know. The whole time. I was like, so I mean, guys, what are we going to do? They're like, we're going to have a lot of fun. I was like, so you basically know nothing, right? Like that's how it was. And it was so frustrating to me because I'm a planner. Like I before I married my wife and had my life changed, I was not a planner. I was like, let's just feel things out and see. You cannot do that as an adult human being. It doesn't work. The world does not work that way. You have to be prepared. You have to plan for things. And so now I am a consummate planner. I have to know what is going on so that I can be ready for it, so I can be prepared. I'm an Eagle Scout. That's one of the Scout mottos, be prepared. I have to know what's going on so that I can be prepared for it. So it was super aggravating not knowing what to be prepared for because then I'm like, I brought way too many clothes. Like I knew I was going to be there for 4 days, but like, you know, you're in a kayak. I could fall in and be wet, so I'm going to need other clothes for that, right? Like I brought way too many rods. I only needed a few, but I didn't know that. I didn't know what we were going to be doing, right? Like so many things that I didn't know, so many things that I wasn't ready for. And that's what this whole series is for you. Is I want you guys to be ready for what happens next. I want you guys to be ready for what is coming. I want you guys to be ready for the life after this one. That's the new series that we're starting, as you can see on the screen. But it's not afterlife, it is after life. What happens after life? I want you guys to be ready for that. Because if you remember a couple of weeks ago when I was going through the questions in the question buckets, we had a lot of questions about this. We had questions about heaven and hell and who goes where and how all of that is determined. And that is what this series is for, is to answer all of those questions. And listen, I know it's not a fun thing to talk about. I know that it makes some of us sad to think about because some of us have walked through this. Some of us have lost family members that we dearly love. Some of us have lost friends, people that we were close to, that we dearly love. Death is not a fun thing to talk about, but it is a necessary thing to talk about. It is an important thing to talk about because all of us die. Anytime Chad and I are talking about death, we call it the great equalizer because no one escapes it. No one escapes it. Rich, poor, good looking, ugly, everybody dies. So we need to be prepared for it, but not in the sense of making like a will or making sure that we do. This isn't going to be a here's how you can do everything that you want to do before you die type thing. This isn't going to be how to make a will type thing. This isn't going to be how to do things in this life, really, to get ready for the next one. How to make this life worth it, or what? That's not what this is about. This is making sure that when that day comes, like the video said, when that day comes, when your life is over, you're ready for the life after that. Because there is a life after this one. Look at John 14. Jesus is at what we call the Last Supper. So if you've ever seen the fancy painting with Jesus and all the dudes around him at the table and they're like this, that's what we call the Last Supper. That's the name of that painting. This is what we're going to be reading tonight. It's the Last Supper. He's sitting with his disciples. It's called the Last Supper because it's the last time that Jesus is going to have supper with his disciples, because he's going to die the next day. He's going to be crucified. One of his disciples goes out to betray him, Judas. And he goes to get Jews to come and arrest Jesus so that all of this can happen. And Jesus knows this. He knows that all of this is going to happen. He even sends that disciple out to do it. He tells Judas, he says, go do what you have to do. Jesus knows all of this is coming. And so he's trying to make sure his disciples are ready for it. He's trying to make sure that they are ready for what happens next. And so this is what he says. John chapter 14. We're going to start in verse 1. This is what it says. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. There is more than enough room in my Father's home. If this were not so, would I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? When everything is ready, I will come and get you so that you will always be with me where I am. So Jesus tells them not to worry, not to be afraid, not to be troubled about everything that's about to happen next. He says, my Father's house has plenty of room. I'm going to go there, I'm going to get everything ready, and then I'm going to come back and get you. Which sounds like really comforting. It sounds like really nice. But if you think about what's going to happen next, like if you think about the context that this is happening in, it's not very comforting and it's not very nice. Because Jesus is about to die. And so he's telling them, I'm going to go to my Father's house. Who's Jesus' Father? God. Where is God? In heaven. So he's saying, I'm going to heaven. I'm going to die, go to heaven, and prepare a place for you, and then I'm going to come back for you so that you can always be with me where I am. So he's basically telling them, I'm going to die and go to the Father, and then when your time comes, you're going to die and I'm going to come back for you. So he's basically telling them, you're going to die. Really soon after all of this, for some of you. You're going to die. And he wants them to be ready for that. He wants them to have that thought on their mind when they walk away from that dinner that night. And they go through all the events of the next day. When they walk away from seeing him crucified on the cross. And as they go through every other day of their life, he wants one thought on their mind. He wants them to be motivated by one thing. And that is the knowledge and the truth that there is a life after this one. That's what he wants them to focus on. He wants them to be focused on the fact that there is a life after this one. And that's your first blank. There is a life after this one, and that's the one we should focus on. There is a life after this one, and that's the one we should focus on. Now, it doesn't come as any surprise to us that we all die and that there's an afterlife, right? That there's a life after this one. That's not shocking to anyone, right? Like, no one came in here tonight being like, oh, we're going to live forever. If you did, I'm so sorry that I burst your bubble. But that is the truth, okay? But no, most people when you came in here, you knew that there's going to be a day that you're going to die. Most religions in the world believe this. Most religions in the world also believe that there is a life after this one, right? And they all have different theories about what happens. You have religions that say that you ascend to a higher level of being, or you become one with the universe. If you like Star Wars, you become one with the Force, right? And so, I had to slip that one in there. So, they believe that. You have other religions that believe what you do in this life determines what you come back as in the next one. So there's still a life after this one. You just return here, and depending on how you acted, your life will either be better or worse than it was when you were here the first time, right? It's what we call reincarnation. And they believe that process just goes on for forever. That this world will exist for forever, And then as long as this world exists, that process exists, right? So like if you if you lead a great life, you could be reborn as like a leader or somebody in a wealthy family. If you live a really poopy life, you come back as like a dung beetle or something, right? That's what they believe. They believe in reincarnation. But most religions in the world, the most popular religions, believe in heaven. Like Islam, Muslims, they believe in heaven. We believe in heaven. That is the most popular belief. We believe that is where we go when we die. We say that we go to a better place, right? But none of us focus on that. We're all focused on living, not dying, right? We're focused on getting everything we can out of this life and not missing out on anything before it's over. But Jesus says here that that's the wrong focus. That's the wrong focus. You guys know that Kristen and I like to travel to Disney World for vacation. And I didn't get to go till I was like a full-grown adult, right? All I knew about Disney World is what I had seen on TV and what Kristen had told me from when she had gone when she was younger, right? And so when it came to planning our trip, again, we're planners, when it came to planning our trip, deciding on what we were going to do, it was kind of like the Zoom call I mentioned at the beginning of this, only instead of saying, I don't know, every answer that came out of my mouth was, yes. Do you want to ride this? Yes. Do you want to eat here? Yes. Do you want to meet this character? Yes. I literally wanted to do everything that we could do in Disney World. Wanted to go to all the parks. I wanted to meet all the characters. I wanted to meet Mickey and Minnie and Jasmine and Ariel and Belle and all of them. Mainly the princesses. The princesses can go somewhere else, but the princesses, I want to meet them. They're the most famous in every story. The princes are just, I don't know if there's anyone in this room that can name all the princes, but we can name all the princesses because they're the most important, right? The princes in the story are just a supporting character. Anyway, I wanted to meet everyone. I wanted to do all the things. I wanted to go to all the parks. I wanted all the pictures. And so when we planned on going to Disney World, that's what we planned to do, is to get literally as much out of it as humanly possible. To experience everything we possibly could. And then we had Tinley. And that's not a bad thing. I love Tinley. But when it came to going to Disney World, it changed everything. It changed everything immediately. It even changed the way that I thought about Disney World, because now I wasn't looking forward to the things that I could do. I wasn't looking forward to the things that I could get out of it. I was only focused on being with Tinley and Kristen and seeing Tinley experience Disney for the first time and be the age where everything was real to her. Again, I was a full-grown adult when I went, so there wasn't a lot of magic, for me to be like, oh, but everything was real for Tinley. And I just wanted to go and enjoy that. I wasn't so worried about being there and doing all, it was just about being with them and seeing Tinley experience that for the first time. And that's what Jesus is saying here. That there is a life after this one. And that's the life that we should focus on. But when we think about that life, we shouldn't think about anything else but being with Jesus. When we think about heaven, we shouldn't think about anything else except for being with Jesus, because that's what heaven is. That's what paradise is, being with Jesus. And that's what heaven is all about, being with Jesus. And yes, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be beyond our wildest imagination. There's going to be no more tears, no more pain, no more worry, no more doubt, no more fear. We're going to have great things there. We're going to get rewards. We're going to get crowns. We're going to have all of the things. But that should not be our focus. That should not be our motivation. The only thing we should focus on when it comes to the life after this one is being with Jesus. When we think of heaven, we should think about Him. Because that's what He says. I'm going to prepare a place for you so that when everything is ready, when your time here is done, you can come be with me always. tells that to his disciples. He doesn't mention anything about heaven. All he says is, I'm going to make a place so that you can be with me always. That's what we should focus on. That should be our motivation for getting there. But now the question becomes, how do we get there? Because again, we gather from the context that heaven is a real place. Real people go to this real place. Jesus says to his disciples, you will come with me. But the question is, okay, well, how do we get there? If it's a real place and people go there, how do we get there? Even his disciples wonder that. Look at verse 3. When everything is ready, I will come and get you so that you will always be with me where I am. And you know the way to where I am going. No, we don't know, Lord, Thomas says. We have no idea where you're going, so how can we know the way? Jesus told him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. So, even Jesus' disciples, when they're sitting there listening to him talking about this, Jesus says, I'm going to go prepare a place for you, and I'm going to come back and get you. He said, but you already know how to get there. And Thomas, if you know the Bible, you know this is kind of typical of Thomas. He's a doubter. He's a skeptic. He's like, no, we don't. You just said you're going somewhere. And you said, if you read in the verses before this, you said, we can't go where you're going. You said, I am leaving you. Where I'm going, you cannot go. But when everything's ready, you're coming back to get us. And now you're telling us we know how to get it. That doesn't make any sense, Jesus. No, we don't know where you're going. It shows where they're at, honestly, while they're listening to Jesus. Like, they don't understand anything. They're not picking up what he's putting down. When they hear Jesus say he's going somewhere that they can't go, they're like, oh, are you going on vacation? And then you're going to come back and get us, and then we'll all go on vacation together. We're going to, like, that's what they're thinking, right? And so Thomas says, no, we don't know, Lord. How can we possibly know where you're going? You haven't told us. And Jesus answers him by saying this. Look at verse 6 again. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. Jesus says the way to get to where he's going is to follow him. The way to get to where he's going is to follow him. When I was in Oklahoma for this fishing trip, we were in an area where there was no service for my cell phone. Like, zero. Kind of like where we're going this weekend for Epic Weekend. Like, it's the same place we went for Fall Retreat. You know, not only are you not going to have your phones, and when you get your phones, they're not going to work because there's no service out there. Okay? It's the same way in Oklahoma. Like, I had to wait every day until we got back to the cabin late at night so I could just text and call Kristen because there was no service anywhere. When we did have service, it was 3G. I am not kidding. It was 3G. Do you know how old 3G is? Like 4 years. It still exists in Oklahoma. It was terrible. It was the worst. And so we're trying to navigate how to get to these boat ramps and stuff and follow these roads, because a lot of the places we went were pretty remote. We took back roads to get there. And so we needed some sort of GPS. And I didn't have that because there's no service. There were only 2 guys there who had service good enough to lead us around where we were going. And so every time we left to go fishing, I had to follow one of them to get to where we were going. And that is what Jesus is saying here. If we're going to get to where he's going, we've got to follow him. There's a life after this one, and if the disciples want to get there, they have to follow them. There's a life after this one, and if we want to get there, we have to follow Jesus. That's your next blank. There is a life after this one, and we have to follow Jesus to get there. Now think about this in context. Okay, think about this in what's going on. Jesus is at the Last Supper. We said it's called the Last Supper because it's Jesus' last supper with his disciples. It's his last night on earth. It is his last night to be alive. And where is he going the next morning? To the cross. He's going to go die. And so when Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me, when he says, you have to follow me to get to where I'm going, he's telling them, you have to die to get there, which makes logical sense, right? If we believe that we go to heaven when we die, we have to die to go to heaven, correct? That's logical. But that's not what Jesus is talking about. Early on in Jesus' ministry, Jesus tells his disciples this. Matthew 16:24. He says, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. If you want to be my follower, if you want to be my disciple, if you want to get to where I'm going, you have to give up your own way, pick up your cross, and follow me. He tells them, you have to die to get to where I'm going. You have to die to get to where I'm going. That's the key. In Matthew, he says, give up your own way. That's the death that he's talking about. Not talking about a physical death, but a spiritual one. Give up your own way. Here in John, he says, I am the way. So when Jesus says, pick up your cross, what he means is you die to following your plan for this life. You die to following your desires. You die to following your dreams. And instead, you follow Jesus. Here he says, I am the truth. We're told all the time to live our truth, to do what we think is right. But Jesus says, no, you die to that. You give that up. And you follow my truth. You follow what I say is right. We're constantly being told to live life to the full. But Jesus says here, no, the way to true life, the way to a full life is through death. It's through giving that up. So he's not talking about a physical death. He's talking about a spiritual one. We die to ourselves. We die to our way of life. We give up following our heart, chasing our dreams, doing what pleases us, and instead we follow his way of life and do what pleases him. That's how we get to heaven. We follow Jesus. We follow Jesus to the cross. Die to ourselves, and we live for him. And listen, that is the only way that we get to heaven. Look at John 14:6 one more time. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. No one comes to the Father. No one gets to heaven, because that's where God is. We said that in the beginning. God is in heaven. So no one gets to the Father. No one gets to the heaven unless they do everything that Jesus says. Unless they die to themselves, give up their own way, and follow him. That's super important for us to know, because right now, we believe, not just we in this room, but the majority of people who claim to be Christian believe that all you have to do is say a prayer that goes, Jesus, I'm a sinner. Please forgive me for my sin. And let me follow you all the days of my life. And then we go get dunked in a tub of water. And that's it. That makes us a Christian. That gets us into heaven. And nothing else changes. Nothing else about our life changes. We go back to doing the exact same thing that we did before. The only difference now is we go to church and we try really, really hard to be good. We try hard to follow the rules a little bit more. And when we don't follow the rules, we ask for forgiveness. But nothing else changes. We still live like people who don't believe in Jesus live. We buy into the things that they buy into. We follow their trends. We dress like them. We chase after the things that they chase after. We value the things that they value. We prioritize the things that they prioritize. We don't look any different. We don't read our Bible. We don't pray. We don't serve with love and generosity. We don't treat our relationships different. We don't look at people any differently. Everything stays the same. But that's not following Jesus. That's just trying to be a good person. That's just trying to be better than the people who are around you. But listen to me very, very closely. Jesus doesn't want good people. Jesus doesn't want good people. Jesus wants godly people. He wants godly people. There are a lot of good people that aren't going to make it to the life after this one. There are a lot of people whose lives look better than yours that aren't going to make it to the life after this one. Why? Because Jesus doesn't want good people. He wants godly people. That's your next blank. There is a life after this one, and only godly people go there. There is a life after this one, and only godly people go there. When I was 16, I was at Super Summer, which is a camp that we're going to here in a few months. And before that, I'd been out of church for a while, a few years. And it's not like I've been doing anything bad or stopped believing or anything like that. I just hadn't been going. I still believed in God. I still believed in Jesus. I still tried hard to be good and not break the rules and all of that stuff. But I wasn't following Jesus. And so I'm standing there at this camp, or I'm sitting there in the front row at this camp during one of the big evening services that we had. And for the first time in my entire life, I heard the truth about what it really means to be a Christian. I heard the truth about what it really means to be a follower. And I found out that it wasn't about just believing in Jesus, just believing that He existed, or just even believing that He came and died on the cross to save us from our sins. But I heard that it was about believing that so much that it changes your life. Because you can believe in a fact, and that fact still does not change your life, right? How many of you got parents that drive way too fast? Most of us, right? The fact is, if you drive too fast and get caught, you get a ticket. Does that slow anybody down? No. You can believe a fact and it not change your life. You can believe the fact that Jesus existed, that He came to this earth, and that He died on the cross to save you from your sins, and you still not believe it enough to make you a true Christian. I heard that for the first time. I heard that being a Christian wasn't about just believing in Jesus, but becoming like Him. That it was about following His way of life. That it was about seeing things the way that He did, treating people the way that He did, finding my worth in Him, following His example, looking at the world through the lens of His Word, instead of looking at His Word through the lens of the world. I learned that it wasn't about being good, but being godly. And that the only way to do that was to get to know Jesus. The only way that could happen was to get to know Jesus. And so that night, I went and did what you're really supposed to do. For the first time in my life, I believed that I was a sinner. That the way that I was living my life, the way that I thought, the way that I conducted myself in my relationships with my friends and the girls I wanted to date was all wrong. I was doing things my way. And not only was that not the best for me, but it wasn't God's design for that. And because of that, I deserved death. So I asked for forgiveness. And then I committed to spending the rest of my life to try and become a godly person and not a good person. To learn who Jesus was, have a personal relationship with him, and become like him. None of it has been easy. I haven't done it perfectly. I've messed up. I have fallen. And I've gone through hard things. But my life has been better than I ever could have imagined it. Because regardless of what has happened, in spite of my mistakes, God has always been there. God has always loved me. God has always taken me back when I turned from him. And despite all of the hard things that I have gone through, it hasn't weakened my faith in Jesus. It has strengthened my faith in Jesus. Because that's what the Bible tells us hardships are for. To strip everything away from us that we rely on and show us that he is all that we need. And because of all of that, I'm not the same person that I was at 16. I'm not even the same person that I was last year. Because I'm growing in my relationship with Jesus. I'm growing in my knowledge of him. And that is the only way that we get to heaven. No one gets there any other way. Jesus says so. No one. No one. No matter how good you are in the eyes of people, no matter how successful you are in the eyes of this world, no matter how much you accumulate, none of that matters to God, because he's not looking for good people. He's looking for godly people. And that's what all of this means for you. There is a life after this one. But the only way that you get there is through Jesus. The only way that you get there is through Jesus, by focusing on him, by following him, and by becoming like him, by dying to yourself and living for him every single day. Every morning when you get out of bed, you say, "Let your will be done, God, not mine." And you strive every day to do that. If not, the Bible says there is no life for you after this. There's only death. Look at Mark 8:34. This is what it says. You don't have to turn there. It'll be on the screen. Jesus says, if any of you wants to be my follower, if you want to be my disciple, if you want to go where I am going, you must give up your own way. Take up your cross and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake and for the sake of the good news, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? If you give up your life for Jesus now, you get to keep it in the life after this one. But if you hang on to your life, if you use this life trying to get everything that you can out of it, if you use this life for you and doing things your way and doing what you think is right, you're going to lose it. There is no life after this one for you if you do that. Is that worth your soul? Is that worth your eternity? That's the decision that you have to make tonight. To keep on going the way that you're going, to ignore this, to walk away from it, or to change what you focus on. Change what you follow. And as Instead of working to be a good person, strive to be a godly person, someone who knows Jesus, who loves Jesus, and who tries every day to do his will for their life. You can either live for yourself and lose your life, or you can die to yourself and find out what life is really all about. Here's your last point. If I want to be ready for the life after this one, I have to die to living for this one. If I want to be ready for the life after this one, I have to die to living for this one. That is the only way you're going to be ready. Let's pray.